Thank you so much. We're supposed to do like fun facts on everybody, and we decided not to do that because we only have 30 minutes. But I'm still going to do my unknown fact, is the fact that I went to middle school with that guy, and he's way more successful than I am, but at least, I have some things that he doesn't. So, welcome to this panel. I'd like to introduce my amazing guests. And I hope I'm not going to miss their names. So Francesco Andre at MetaMask, please come on board. I like show games or game shows. David Mihal, founder at CryptoStats, come on down. And Tal, it's funny that the Israeli name is the one that I can't pronounce. Tchwella from Solana. Woo! Okay, so take your seats. So this session is about community building, and I'm gonna briefly introduce myself. I'm an investment director. So you're probably thinking, what the hell does a VC knows about community building and developer relations? And you'd be right. So Samsung Next is an early stage investment fund for Samsung. It's very complex to explain exactly how, but I'm leading our Web3 investments, especially out of Israel, especially for developer tools and automation. But in my past, I was one of the original Google developer experts for Android and AI. I founded the first communities for open source in Israel, for mobile and open source in Israel in 06 and 07. So I know quite a bit about community and developer relations, not so much so in Web3, but part of the premise for this panel is that I think that there are a lot of tools that Web3 companies are not using that have existed since the early 90s. So, I stopped blabbering. Now, down to the questions. Dear gentlemen, or ladies, I don't know how you perceive yourself, that's perfectly fine. Could you start by introducing yourself a little bit and the company that brought you here?
Sure, I can start introducing myself. Hey guys, I'm Francesco. Are you guys excited about this conference?
Woo!
Very well, very well. Cool, yeah, great to be here. I'm based in Switzerland, global, going a little bit around the world in conference, in hackathon, and my main job is developer onboarding, and I've been for the past decade in developer communities. And I love speaking with the developers, onboarding developers, getting feedback from developers, and yeah, excited to be here.
Hey everybody, my name is David Mihal, and I work on the project you guys might know me most for is a website called CryptoFees. Has anyone seen CryptoFees.info? Nice, nice. So CryptoFees is part of a bigger project called CryptoStats, which is a kind of data metrics project. We aggregate data metrics and display them in different ways. And yeah, that's, I guess, my main background. I think we'll talk more about that in a bit.
And hi, everybody. If you want to hear about Solana, maybe you want to come to the front. My name is Tal. I am product at Solana Labs, where we were the original creator of the Solana protocol and are building the validator. I lead product engineering, where we're building apps and applications on top of the blockchain. I came from Meta, where I was leading the crypto platform team, building the infrastructure for Facebook and Instagram with all the NFTs, and prior to that, DM. And excited to be here. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so is everybody in the back row, if you can hear me, raise your hand a little bit? Oh, not so much. Okay, so let me do something like this. Hey, everybody out back! Shut up! Or at least, if you want to talk, go to the third floor. Thank you.
Can I use something from my Hebrew school? Check it, bavakasha. Hey.
Good. Okay, next question would be, how did you get into Web3? What made it interesting for you, and how did you start?
Sure, I can start, but yeah, the long story short is, yeah, I was geeking out into the smart contract security space. Had some PhD friends while I was still at my master back in Zurich, and I started basically like, yeah, mining it and get excited about it.
So for me, I guess probably a lot of us worked in Web 2 back in the day. So I used to work for Google and worked for a number of other Web 2 companies and was not really vibing with the whole Web 2 stuff. So I left and kind of just did like freelance and traveled for a while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do in my life. And yeah, one day I was in a hostel, like kind of like this one. I was in Ukraine. I met this dude and we went for a beer and he was in crypto and we just spent like hours talking about how we can re-architect like the incentive models of the world to build new economies and stuff like that. And I went to bed that night and I was like, I think this is what I want to do with my life. This is like really cool and it's like applicable to my skills and like this is much more interesting and much more impactful than anything you can do in Web 2. So like later that week I was like doing Solidity tutorials and now I'm here.
Not quite a similar journey. Mine started, I read the Bitcoin paper back in 2013. And that was an exciting time, and I thought it was kind of crazy that the price spiked from 100 to 300, and I was like, this is whack. Didn't really understand what it was all about back then. Jumped back on the train in 2016 with Ethereum kind of popping, and it was interesting to see. I think then all I understood was there was an ETH token that was spiking in price, doubling, I think, day to day. It was an interesting time at the end of 2016, and then Diem was my first venture into crypto and actually working on it. I think that's when I kind of started falling in love for kind of a similar reason to you, David, of working on really complex, interesting problems in a way, designing things that we have in Web 2 in a completely different way. And I think where tokenomics are really important, and that kind of changes a lot of the behaviors and how do we incentivize human behavior in a new and different way. So that was my venture into it.
Excellent. So, various situations that we have here. Some of your companies are more developer focused, some are not so much. So, could you share a little bit of stats on how your respective ecosystems are, in certain numbers that you can share?
I can start. So Electro Capital report just came out a couple weeks ago. I'm sure we've all seen it, at least the L1s and the L1 lakes. And with Solana, we have over 2,000 developers in our ecosystem, second to only ETH. We're seeing huge growth year over year in the number of developers. I think part of it is due to some of the things that we've done over the past year that I'm sure we're going to talk about in the panel. But a lot of on-chain activity, a lot of developers, the number of programs. So Solana is a little bit different, and happy to chat with everybody afterwards if you don't know Solana and want to learn more about it. But we have basically programs running on-chain. We have almost 2,000 reusable, daily used programs on-chain. So a lot of exciting stuff.
My project is much smaller than you guys' projects, so I don't think I have any like impressive metrics to share. But we're growing. We've got these websites, we've got a lot of data in our platform, and we're always trying to grow that. And I think what we'll be talking about is how we leverage like a developer community to try to scale that growth of data in this industry. But yeah, I don't have any cool metrics to share though.
Yeah. I don't know about stats, but obviously everybody know a little bit about MetaMask, right? 30 million monthly active users. But on the developer side, we keep like builders focused on specific verticals. We, as everybody know, how many of you guys know MetaMask Snaps? Yeah, cool. Oh, that's why we're in Builders event, because everybody know this kind of stuff.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But right now, I mean, in terms of like Snaps build, I don't know, we are really excited about the community building more and more Snaps, but I would say around 30,000 developer in the space. And obviously, like the majority of Web3 builder is starting into the Solidity onboarding and the Ethereum ecosystem, right? But we can speak more about definitely like Snaps onboarding. Anything that you wanna talk about?
Cool. So I'm going to start, before we're going to start on the mechanics on how you're building this community, I do want to ask, a little bit about the developer product fit. What is it at the moment, and what was the aha moment when you said, "Oh, this is what they want," or "This is what I want to do"?
I can start. I think for us, one of the main selling points of Solana is the technology. But at the end of the day, people come for the technology, but they stay for the vibes. And I think that that is something that is really interesting about the Solana community, where people really enjoy, like once they start building and seeing this very inclusive developer environment, they decide to stay there. And I think that's where people become Solana maximalists, is because of the vibes. But to us, it was like the main drawing point has always been the technology, a more performant L1 that is able to scale to the needs of those developers.
I guess the other thing that goes with vibes is values. When you're attracting developers, especially in something, open source where people are going to be kind of just contributing oftentimes for free, hopefully they can get paid. But especially at first, people will come in and just say, hey, I want to contribute to this project. You want to make sure that the project is matching the vibes of the developers you're trying to attract. Are you, so for CryptoStats, we really try to value open source, neutrality, being trustless, things like that. And, I think we're a small project, but I think people recognize kind of we're trying to act as a public good, and that makes people much more interested in contributing, putting their time into kind of giving back to the ecosystem in any way, even if that giving back means just kind of fixing some bugs in the code somewhere, making some pull requests or updating something. If you don't have the right values, if people kind of smell BS in your project, like nobody's going to want to contribute to that.
And I will even take one step backwards, right? I will say, okay, where developers on board, I will say not on project, but on programming languages, right? This ecosystem are valued because, I don't know, people are interested in staying in the Rust community, or they're going back to their Solidity community, or they're going and exploring other ecosystem with Cairo development. And I think that's where actually like a developer are going or moving. So, and that's very dependent on the tooling that the ecosystem provides. And the second factor is my mic. Can you guys hear me well?
Maybe you should try like this.
We get each other, yeah. But the other big factor is support, ecosystem support. You need to be sure that the developers are engaged. You shout out what they're building. You have current things like ambassador programs, you have grants program, and
so we're going to talk about the mechanics later, but my specific question was about the actual value to developers. So you said scalability, and cost and performance. You said
Values.
your main deliverable for developers is values.
Deliverable for developers, like what
Developers want when they come and use your APIs or your SDK.
Okay, I mean, so what they want when they're using us, the thing that attracts them is having a good value prop, I guess, of what you're building. So for us, part of it is our data gets fed into a lot of places. We have what people probably mostly use us because they want to get their data onto our websites like CryptoFees. People might not know that we also feed data to a lot of other sites like Bloomberg and The Block and stuff like that. So, but when you're, again, if you're contributing to a really small project and not having a lot of impact, it's good. There'll be developers, but it'll be hard if people's work doesn't have impact. But people know that, they make a contribution to our project, it's going to go out to a lot of people. It's going to have a lot of effect. So that's, I think, usually where people come in.
And obviously depend on the target persona, target developer, but easiness on onboarding and support.
Okay, fair enough. So different use cases a little bit, an infrastructure, connection integration, and sort of a collaboration, if you will, right? And that's very good because it touches down to the point of developer relations in general is to, and it's funny because the last session, I don't remember the name of the speaker, she was very good, talked about education is onboarding the community and incentives is onboarding the communities. So if you could pinpoint on how you started with thinking about the developers and building the incentives for them and educating them on the incentives and the offering, what would it be?
I could probably start. So we started with amplifying the voices and content that the community generated. We saw that was a very important step for people to be aware of what's going on and the fact that it's very ecosystem forward, and the ecosystem is pushing the ecosystem forward. I think the other part has been the grants program of making sure that we create the right incentives for people to generate open source software for the rest of the ecosystem. So I think those two together with then the hacker houses that we've generated. I don't know if it's the right time to talk about it, but
When you want to talk about it, it's the right time.
all right, cool. And I think that the other thing has been bringing the community together in certain spaces. So last year we had 24 hacker houses around the world. This year we're going to have 12, actually one here in Tel Aviv in the end of June, where we're basically bringing people into a space to start collaborating and sharing ideas with one another in order to create, again, those vibes and that environment for our ecosystem to grow and learn from each other. So those are the important things. And then we also have online hackathons. Again, it's about the spirit of collaboration, because we know all crypto is a global community and it cannot be confined to a single space.
I guess this is. Can you repeat the question?
I said that. How did you build the incentives for the developers, and how did you educate them initially on the offering?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest incentives for a developer is just getting that feeling of contributing something and seeing it work and kind of getting that like dopamine hit of like, my code works. And the best way to kind of get people to feeling that is you want to lower the barrier entry to getting started on your platform or your code or whatever. So, I mean, what we've tried to do is we built this, we built a lot of tooling around making it really easy to contribute. Adapters is kind of our core like piece of code. So we have like a web-based UI. You can go in there. You don't need to download any software. You don't need to install anything. You can write some code and like run it in the browser and be like, it works. And then if it works, you can like publish it right there. And I don't know. I feel like I've definitely like tried to contribute to projects in the past or get involved in projects, and I'm like downloading some SDKs and libraries, and it doesn't work on my CPU or something like that. You're gonna lose people there. So the easier you can make it for the developer, especially the new developer, to get started, to feel like they understand it and they can contribute. That's how you can start building that relationship, and hopefully like those new developers are sticky and they kind of stick around after.
Yeah, I really agree on that. What you described, I just call them interactive tutorials, but I want to say something backwards. I want to say onboarding is extremely important, right? And there are different collaterals you need to test. So probably like a more advanced developer going to documentation directly, but a lot of people, they just, I don't know, like myself included, developers in general are very lazy, right? They wanna get to the right stuff fast. They wanna, trying to find any other channels around to get it, and you need to test on different ways. So we want to speak about use case, or you want to do it a little bit later?
Whichever you want to go. Well, I do want to point out though that developers are lazy but also cynical, because it is very, very easy to lose developer traction if they think that what they're getting is a sales pitch or a marketing content, if they're not actually being spoken by a technical person, which is always the duality of how you hire a DevRel, if you do, or when you do it.
Yeah, that's why it's extremely important, the selling part. Never sell, right, in the community, or never monetize your developer community. So there is a lot of politics in the company, like on that. But I think like different collaterals at a different time of stage. So developer interactive tutorials, I think those are a really strong use case that we did in the past, because you were actually tracking which stage, where, in which tutorial, based on the documentation.
Could you drill down, because for those of us who don't know what an interactive tutorial could be a good tool?
Yeah, so basically these are, as you kind of mentioned, right? Those are interactive sandbox IDE. You don't need to install any dependencies. You just click beginner unbox, truffle unbox, or like how to start getting started with Infura, you just click start, and you basically have a right side where you have like a tutorial, left side, and an interactive IDE with a terminal. So basically Visual Studio Code embedded. But the cool thing is that you copy curl, you just copy in your terminal, and you run basically like through a journey. And the journey is divided in different sections, right?
So it's like a code lab that you do on your own and you don't need anybody else to do it.
Exactly. And people can pick up which tutorial they want to do and specific stages, right? But the cool stuff is that, yes, a developer can run through their tutorials, but it's extremely important that also the people that build this have better and more effective feedbacks. Because I know how many people bounce where. That means I need to go back to my documentation and making that more effective.
Yeah, that is very, very, very important. The looping back.
Exactly.
I was just going to say that made me think of crypto zombies, which is like probably like I know many people personally who like got into Web3 through crypto zombies, and it's such an effective tool when you can make someone like have the tutorial and the code there, no dependencies, anything like.
I think one thing you touched on that we don't talk enough, it's not just about developer onboarding, but developer retention. And I think that's like key to making sure you actually build a vibrant community of developers on your ecosystem. It's not enough to just bring them on and show them the tutorials and make sure that they onboard, but actually retaining them in your ecosystem and making sure that they build and sustain it.
100%. I mean, I'm always kind of tell people there is this awareness phase of DevRel and then there is conversion DevRel, right? You need to have both. But in the conversion phase, you need to help them like in this feedback loop and getting support that they need, especially because so many people are just, throwing out hackathons and 2 days after they won, nothing really happens. And I think this kind of retention that you're mentioning about, it's really important.
So I'm going to provide a case study, and I know it's not Web3, but essentially. So you're talking about an onboarding or an improvement journey for developers in code labs or dynamic. What was the name? I don't remember. But there's also should be like a pointer to something, and that's usually documentation or specific examples like code snippets. And it's one of the most laborious tasks for any DevRel ever. So how do you maintain it besides using ambassadors, as you mentioned before?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, I think if you're building your DevRel team or anything that's to do with like developer support or community, one thing that you need to have is like some kind of ref apps. So like a reference application page with like examples, and this can be maintained, yes, by ambassadors. But if the tier of ambassador is enough, like let's say intermediate or advanced, but I think the engineering team also need to basically like keep up with the upgrade, because I saw many like reference page, they're non-maintained. So many apps that you're trying to build and like, oh sorry, like we didn't keep up to maintaining that, and this is the most boring kind of job. But I think the company is responsible and accountable to do this.
One thing you see, something that comes from like customer support is like if you have one user complains about something, that means like 100 users had the same problem. Same thing's true for DevRel. If you have one user in your Discord that like can't understand your code snippets or your documentation or something, that means you had 100 other developers who tried that, couldn't figure it out, gave up, and you lost them.
I think DevRel is a mindset. It's not just a job, right? And I think that the entire company has to understand how important this is, making sure that they update the right references, the right documentation, and it's an ongoing job that is never ending. So I think it's more of a mindset.
So would you say that part of the incentivization for the community of developers would be to assist in the struggle, as it will? I mean, ambassadors is a certain kind of program where you cherry pick experts and having them write content, and that's good. But there are also efforts that are far more to the long tail, where you can incentivize developers on commenting on documentation, suggesting on new kind of documentation, sending you links to their blog posts to be featured, etc., etc. Is that something that you do or are considering?
we're doing it, we have what we call super teams. It's basically a way to scale our operation, and there are super teams everywhere around the world. We actually come to a country and they start doing some of those activities. So it's something that we found it kind of works and helps us scale and build the right documentation, right? You start with, I think there are multiple journeys, right? You start with a certain developer, and then you got enterprise developers, you got people that want to come from EVM in our case, people that are just coming into Web3, so many different paths, and you kind of have to accommodate all of those. And I think it's part of it is scaling, and you need to find a way to do it.
I imagine that helps you also have resources in different languages, right? If you're building out local communities,
Of course.
which is
That's where generative AI should come on board. It's very helpful. So you mentioned hacker houses. Could you explain a little bit what that means?
Yeah, so it's basically it's like the hacker houses that we all kind of imagine, where you get pizzas and beer and let people basically do their thing for a couple days. We just have finished one now in Istanbul. That was, I think, the biggest yet, with over 1,000 people. Was very successful. And what we've done actually prior to that, we've run a boot camp for a week to teach people about Solana. And then those teams went and developed things on top of Solana. So we see that model actually as a good way of bringing multiple resources spent in kind of dispersed ways, bringing them together into a cohesive experience for the developers to understand what Solana is. And we're going to continue doing these hacker houses where basically people submit ideas, tell us what they want to work on, and we then bring them to the space. We provide monitors, food, drinks, and then at the end of the day, we do demos to investors in order to, again, help the ecosystem grow beyond all of this.
So a new form of hackathon, or a progressive sort of hackathon.
Person.
A mental note, I hate hackathons, and I blame Meta specifically for bringing this spawn into the world. But I do think it's a very, very important tool for developer relations when you have a specific set of features that you want to show use cases for or expose a very hyper-local community to. I just think that maybe not today, but there were a couple of years that it was way overused for pretty much anything and everything.
I think they're also good to push the engineering team to ship specific features, because a good way that we are doing with Snaps is every hackathon we're trying to differentiate the bounties with a specific feature that we ship, for example, transaction inside, key rings, and it's also a good way to have, hey, this is the deadline, please deliver that before the hackathon. If not, it's very difficult also to motivate those developer teams. And yeah, I think also the way why IRL events are important is you actually can sit down with a developer in the onboarding phase or in the support phase, but you can actually see what they're doing, because there are very different type of funnel and journeys, right? And people will search for specific things in documentation and they cannot find it, so they go some YouTube tutorials, they go to GitHub discussion, they go in Discord or discourse, and you see really in front of you what's happening, and you can recreate that. So never underestimate those IRL events. Maybe this is just a question on hacker houses in general, or to the audience, how you define ROI wise if your hacker house or hackathon was successful. What are the metrics out there?
It's a very good question.
I mean, I think you mentioned stickiness before. I guess it's the same thing as hackathons. Hackathons, hacker houses, you'll have teams coming together building something new, which makes sense. You're usually paying them. They get prizes to build stuff, but it's a question of, does it continue? Do projects continue? Do teams keep working together after? Do projects continue developing? Does funding come to these projects? That would be my guess.
I mean, I think like a lot of different things, it's a funnel, right? You have a number of people that registered, how many actually completed and submitted something, how many people afterwards got funding. So I think like everything else, there's just a funnel to it, and you basically want to track your metrics across the entire funnel. And I think what it converges to at the end of the day is those teams actually going and getting funding and continuing their work beyond the hackathon.
So which would you prefer? You prefer a super technical person in this space who would learn how to do developer relations, or a competent developer relations person but not specifically educated in Web3? And why?
For DevRel,
Yes.
a lot of those people are like, your customer is engineers, and therefore I think to understand that mindset you have to be an engineer first before anything else.
No, most DevRels could be engineers, but not specifically Web3. They could be, evangelist for, I don't know, Kubernetes, and they want to be DevRel, so they might come over. Would you?
I think you want them to know the customer the best. It doesn't matter, they need to understand engineers. They have to have the same mindset. I think Web3 is just an added layer on top of it. It's an area rather than an experience you're getting. And I think you need to understand, like, we all know that commercial is what wins at the end of the day, and therefore you need to know your customer and have that customer obsession.
Yeah, since DevRel, they're not just customer support. They're also trying to motivate and get people excited about what they're doing. And in crypto, this is a space that most of us, this is not our job. This is something we're passionate about. So you want your DevRel person to have that passion that's going to get like the other developers excited about what you're building. If you bring someone from Web2, of course, anybody from Web2 can join Web3 and get excited and passionate and be a good DevRel. But if it's someone that just kind of views crypto as a job, views it as just like another industry, they're probably going to have a tough time getting developers excited if they're not personally excited about it themselves.
Okay, so we only have a few minutes left. So why don't I ask you about projections? How do you see the futures of your ecosystems and communities, and how do you plan to support it?
I mean, hopefully everybody knows Snaps for now, but I mean, we see the future like, really power back to the community. So we want community and builders build Snaps and basically extend functionality of the wallet, right? And I think this is where really the value of this Web3 community, the culture is about. So everybody can build and extend functionalities. And I think that's where the future is holding, right? So look at the biggest ecosystem out there, like any extensions out there. Like they never really build those extensions. It was the community they built. Although, like, look at Microsoft. I know what was the application back in the days, the pinball. That's the probably only application that Microsoft built inside but like 99% of applications were built by the developer out there in the community. Same with like iOS, same with like Google Chrome extension, same with VS Code extension. So I think power back the community and not recreate the same use case every time. I see every week like 3 new blockchain happening with specific new heading value, 3 new wallets happening, but we're not moving forward. So that's why like the community need to kind of take this power back and actually build on top of like existing technology stacks.
For us, the main problem we're trying to address is incentivization for developers to contribute. I guess if say you're building on Solana, like there's probably the incentive of you might be building a protocol or a project, something that could be a company. But if you're trying to get people to contribute to kind of open source software where there might not be like a profit motive, it can be challenging, especially to get people to stick around. We have a lot of developers come in that they like our stuff, they want to contribute, but it's hard to stick around when you're just kind of like doing charity and helping fix something. So this is a problem with open source software in general. How do you make it sustainable? And I think crypto, like the Web3 ecosystem, is doing a lot of good stuff, a lot of good experiments. Gitcoin is a big example. Optimism is doing interesting public goods funding things. So I hope to see more experimentation, and I think we'll figure it out. But that's definitely one direction that the space needs to move in.
I think the future is bright for Solana. I think we're seeing that growth. Year over year, the number of developers, the number of users, we're seeing the explosion over the last couple months in the Messari report and the number of active wallets. So overall, I'm very excited about the future, and I think we're gonna continue doing the same things we're doing because we, in a way, found product market fit for it. Those events bring those people closer together to continue generating code and open source software that we're very excited about, as well as other applications, games. So overall, I think there's a lot of interesting things, and the future, I think, is bright for all of us.
Wag me.
Wow, me.
Cool. Thank you so much. I hope this was entertaining and helpful.